Hi, this video is about making your chart, where you try out your subject in all sorts of different canons against itself. You'll make something that looks like this. To know if you have a good canon with your subject or not, you need to know the way consonants and dissonants are handled in this style. This is a dissonant style of counterpoint, so both consonants and dissonants are allowed. We can have things like thirds, sixths, but also seconds, tritones, sevenths are all good sounds. Parallel thirds, of course, are good. Sixths are good, but they are a little bit boring. They're not as interesting in this style as something like parallel sevenths. This was two minor sevenths and a major seventh. Here's all minor sevenths. That's considered a good sound. Things to avoid are, as always, parallel fifths. We don't want that. Parallel octaves. Or unisons. In fact, we even want to avoid striking a fifth on a strong beat or an octave on too strong a beat, because it's not an active dissonant sound. It becomes very stable and tends to stop the music. Dissonance handling to avoid would be something like parallel minor seconds. That's too much. This is fine, but this is too much. Parallel major sevenths is not done in this style, but parallel minor sevenths is fine. Hear how much softer that sounds. To illustrate how desirable dissonance is in this style, let's look and listen to the intervals in Bartók's first canon of his invention. And we can hear that every time notes strike together, they tend to be minor sevenths. That's a good sound. Now we have a tenth, and then another minor seventh, another minor seventh. So the instances of notes striking together are seventh, tenth, seventh, seventh, and that's part of what gives this style its unstable and active sound. You can learn to control even the harshest dissonances. Here's the sound of minor ninths in parallel. Not good. But if we make a minor ninth, and then by contrary motion go to a major seventh, and back to a minor ninth, that's fine. That's actually good. Perhaps the bitterest kind of dissonance there is the minor ninth, like this or that. And we can notice going on in the invention, in measure 3 and 4, Bartók seems to make that happen on purpose. That's a bitter one. And there again, right on the fourth beat of the fourth measure, he brings the subject in on a minor ninth. Let's move on to the chart itself. This is a special piece of paper, actually. This was given to me by my first composition teacher, Curtis Smith, and the name at the top, Andrea Campos, is a student who back in the 90s was in his composition class where he gave this assignment, and I've taken this assignment from him. So I still like to show this chart. It has Curtis's comments on it. He was a pretty famous composer, just died a couple of years ago, and was really important to me, so I like to share some of his work and his comments with you. So first thing we see at the top of the page is Andrea's first subject. And apparently she didn't think that was interesting enough, and before making her chart, she had done some more subject work and came up with you see it has the characteristics we're looking for. It opens up spaces with a couple of leaps of fourths and thirds, and then fills in the space on the way back down and moves to a goal note that hasn't been heard yet. It also leaves right here a rhythmic hole, and you can see the subject is really just perfectly made to be in canon with itself at the 2 beats, because if the subject with its eighth note motion begins after 2 beats, these eighth notes fill in that slow spot in the melody. My daughter Carlin is here with me now to play 2 players at the piano to make it easier to play this counterpoint and go through them all just the way we would in class. Okay, let's try the first one, canon at the octave and at 2 beats. Yeah, that one's pretty good. I like that when the lower voice comes in, it's at a tritone, and then it moves right to another tritone as the bass goes from C to E flat, with E flat A. So it's nice and dissonant, and the rhythm works out perfectly interlocking, one moving when the other one doesn't. Okay, let's try the next one, canon. That one's nice too, and you see Curtis's comment there, later. He says that because this kind of close canon, sometimes called stretto, is better later in the piece when things are heating up a little bit. But things we can notice are we had 2 nice tritones in a row at the very end as the subject is going. We have the counterpoint going. I think we had some good dissonance at the beginning too. Next one has a question mark. So why is this one a question mark? Okay, it's not terrible, but you have to wait such a long time before the second voice comes in that it gets kind of boring. And then when it does come in, it's really square, coming in on the downbeat where the subject began on the downbeat, and the whole thing just feels kind of square. On top of that, on the last note of the subject, notice that the lower voice is hitting an F sharp, so we get this really square, strong fifth, which isn't really great in this style. Let's try that one again, just so you can hear that happen. Okay, now canon at the 3 beats, still at the octave. No real comment on that one, except that it does have a nice dissonance. The G against the F sharp on the second beat of the second measure is good. We're looking at this one right now, and that moment where the F sharp hits the G, I like that. Seems to work pretty well. Now, things get a little more interesting. The response is up a minor third from where it was, making this canon at the 6th. Pretty good. How are the intervals in this one? You know, I noticed that right at this moment here, we strike a 5th again. The C in the lower voice hits against the G in the upper voice, but for some reason I don't mind it in this one. It may be because it's coming from a dissonant interval. There's that contrary motion to the C and G seems to be okay. Let's listen to that again. Listen closely to beat 2 of bar 2. context is everything, and the rest of it is so good that I kind of don't mind that fifth at all. Okay, now the subject comes down a half a step in the response, so this is canon at the seventh. Yeah, I'd say that's usable. Next one, now we're going to hear canon at the ninth with the response beginning on a low B flat. And you can see Curtis says right here, reject. He wanted her to reject this one. Let's try to see why. Well, the one bad thing that happens in it is we hit this strong octave on that G right there. The second beat of the second bar seems to be a problem in several of these, especially when we're doing canon at the 2 beats. But that octave, it's so empty. It sounds like a voice has dropped out or the music has come to a halt. Okay, next one says to reject. This is one that begins on A in the bass clef. That one has a minor ninth at the spot we were talking about. Perhaps it's too consonant in other places. I don't know. The ending of it, Curtis rejected it. Let's try one more. Okay, last one. Canon at the 10th. Curtis said ending okay, opening not very good. Yeah, the opening sounds a little bit too pentatonic, not with the chromatic kind of dissonance in it. And that'll happen with this one because the opening is dangerously pentatonic. And the counterpoint emphasizes that at the beginning, but the ending is nice.